We've already seen how powerful this structure is, but the real question is, how do we survive this position with black? Today we're going to learn 3 simple red flag rules that are going to help you survive this position and fight back with the black pieces. So today we're looking at the French defence, which comes from e4, e6, d4 and d5. Now fundamentally, white has 2 different structures they can go for. They can push the pawn. These are the advanced structures, or they can exchange the pawns, and these are the exchange structures. Now, what white wants to do in the French defence is play the advanced structure. They want to push the pawn. Now, when that pawn comes to e5, that's very dangerous for us as black, because we saw in video 7 about Greek gift sacrifices, and we saw in video 8 about sacrifices on h6, and they all happened in these structures where white has a pawn on e5. Now, the problem for white in playing it immediately is that it's a slow move. It doesn't come with tempo, and it doesn't facilitate development. So in the main lines, black actually ends up ahead in development. So you see here after move 4, black is the only one with a developed piece, and that is because white played a slow move e5. Yes, it's a dangerous structure, but it's still slow. So going back, what white would actually prefer to do is delay that move e5 by first playing something like knight c3, and they want to wait for us to play knight f6 first, so that the move e5 would come with tempo and is no longer a slow move. Now let's have a look at what would happen if black did what white wants here and plays knight f6. White can now play e5, and that allows them to play it with tempo. Now, theoretically, this is fine for black. The advanced structure, though, is hard enough to deal with, so I suggest we don't let white get a good version of it by giving them a tempo, and then we have to play knight f to d7. So that's where rule number 1 comes in. Don't let white play e5 with tempo if we can stop it. We are instead suggesting to play the other main line, which is bishop b4, and we're the ones applying pressure to e4 here because of this pin, and we're forcing white to play e5 without gaining a tempo. So by showing patience, we force white to play a slow move. And we're going to come back to this exact position a little bit later after we've looked at rule number 3. Now before we carry on, today I'm offering 1 free game analysis, no strings attached. So if you'd like me to analyse one of your games for free, leave a comment below. Now, as black, we don't want white to play the advanced variation because it is quite difficult to deal with, but we can't stop them from playing it. They could decide to voluntarily go into it without gaining the tempo immediately. So how are we supposed to respond? The pawn on e5 is a red flag, and it's supported by another pawn on d4. So together they form a pawn chain. e5 is the head of the pawn chain, and d4 is the base of the pawn chain. So do we attack the head directly or the base? So I want to show you first of all what happens if we attack the head directly and we play f6. Now what they could do instead is simply ignore it, because we're attacking this pawn, but because we're not attacking it with a lower valued piece of material, they don't have to react, they don't have to run away, and they don't have to exchange. They could just reinforce the pawn with a move like knight f3. Now, after we take, they can just take back, and look, they still have that red flag. We've captured once, but it's just been replaced by another one. And our king is now vulnerable pre-castling because of this diagonal to our king. And our king will also be vulnerable after castling because white has a pawn on e5 and we don't have a knight on f6. We're going to be vulnerable to Greek gift sacrifices and h6 sacrifices. Another way black could respond to our f6 is by playing bishop d3. Now this tries to exploit us in a different way. It tries to exploit us on this long diagonal, because what black would like to be able to do here is just play queen h5 check immediately, but then after g6 the attack's not really going anywhere. So what they can do first is prepare it with bishop d3, and then if we just try to take the red flag, now they come in with the check, we block, bishop sacrifices here, and it's just game over. So this move f6 from us attacking the head directly, it's just very risky, and more often than not it can backfire if white knows how to respond. So what's the alternative? Idea now is to instead attack the base, and this turns out to just be risk free. And a typical chain reaction of events at lower levels is, first of all, the base of the pawn chain will fall, and then that'll have a knock-on effect where the head of the pawn chain will fall, and then black will just win the game. Now, I want to make a point here. We said white's last move, e5, was a slow move because it didn't come with tempo and it was moving a pawn a second time. I just want to point out that black's response c5 is not a slow move because it forces the move c3 in response. So it was a tempo move in the sense that it forced a particular response from white. Now, this brings us to rule number 2. We want to attack the base of the pawn chain with all of our resources, as many resources as possible. And to continue that, we can play knight c6. Now, remember here, again, black is ahead in development because white played that unprovoked slow move, pawn to e5. Now, I want to have a look at typical continuations from white at different elo levels. Now, the typical next move from white at all levels is knight f3. This happens at the 1000 level, the 1500 level, and the 2000 level. And they're just defending the base. I want you to notice a pattern with these moves. We attack the base with every move, and they're trying to defend the base with every move. Typical next move for black, queen b6, again, attacking the base. Now, at the 1000 level, the most common move from white is bishop e3, trying to defend the base. And this is very typical when one side is focused on defending one point, they accidentally leave another point vulnerable. And that's exactly what they've done on the b2 square here. Black can just play queen takes b2 and white's in a lot of trouble. And this is very typical at the 1000 level. White has already fallen apart. Now, what's the most common move at the 1500 level is bishop e2. White is recognising this pawn is already defended enough and they're just getting on with development. So we could continue with c takes, c takes. We can insert this pawn trade at pretty much any time. And black's next move is knight g to e7. And the idea, again, is all based around this base of the pawn chain. Black's trying to come to f5 to attack the base, trying to get as many pieces involved in that as possible. White castles, knight f5, so we're hitting the base. White plays, most common move, bishop e3, again, trying to defend the base. And once again, even at the 1500 level, white has accidentally left this other point vulnerable. Black plays queen takes b2. And white survived a little bit longer, but eventually they still made the same blunder, and black's just a lot better here. Now, let's go back to the 2000 level and see what the most common move is. It's bishop d3. So white is trying to use a tactic here. They're accidentally hanging their pawn. They now only have two defenders to our three attackers, but they're relying on the fact they have a tactic at the end of it to win our queen with this bishop check. So they're trying to use a tactic to bait us, but we can trade the pawns once as normal, and the best move here is bishop d7, stopping that eventual bishop check tactic, and hence we're now renewing the pressure against the base. So white's most common response actually in practice at this level is to just sacrifice the base of the pawn because holding onto it is too difficult. So that says something really good about our plan already. The second move, and it's going to be really good to illustrate our point, is bishop c2, renewing this queen's defence. Now this raises a question: how should black continue when white defends the base well, like this, and doesn't blunder a pawn, like at those lower levels? Now we're going to come back to that in a moment, because first of all I want to give you a little quiz to kind of test the understanding of rule 2. So we're going to go right back to the beginning, and I want to play a slightly different structure, which is where we play c6 on move 1 instead of e6, because it's going to lead to a very similar structure. Let's play the main line, which is d4, d5, and white plays the advanced structure. So they voluntarily play this slow advanced structure move. Now, in this position, we haven't violated rule 1 since white didn't get to play it with tempo. And let's remember, what's rule number 2? Rule number 2 is to attack the base of the pawn chain with all our resources. So what's the first move we need to play to attack that base? We play c5, attacking the base. White's most common move at all levels is c3, defending the base. Black's most common move, knight c6, again, attacking the base. Really repetitive stuff. Everything revolves around that square. White plays knight f3, defending it. We can trade the pawns pretty much at any point. And here's a little test for you. Where does this bishop want to go to contribute to the task of pressuring that base? Because this is a light square bishop we're looking at, and that is the base is on a dark square. So the really good move we have is bishop g4. This bishop can't attack the base directly, but it can attack a piece which is defending it. So this light square bishop can still contribute, even though it's on the wrong colour square. White normally responds bishop e2, breaking the pin, and we can play e6. Now the idea here is to prepare ourselves to manoeuvre both of these remaining minor pieces, the knight and the bishop. White plays castles, and we play knight g to e7. The idea here is to reroute the knight to f5, again where it attacks the base. Everything is revolving around that. White plays knight c3, knight f5. We're hitting the base 2 times now, and we're indirectly pressuring it 1 time with this bishop. And this is where you start to see a divergence at the different levels. At the 1000 level, the most common move is h3, attacking that bishop. And white has completely missed the point here. We capture the knight, so removing a defender of the base. They recapture, and now we simply get to win it. We're attacking it twice, and it's only defended once. So which piece is better to capture with? Which knight? Now, the idea here is that the f knight is better because our next step after capturing the base successfully will be to move our attention to the head, which is now weakened. And this knight on c6 is already in a position where it's attacking the head. So that knight is good where it is. That's why we leave the c knight there. Now, in practice, once that base is gone, The next target will be the head, and in practice, it will fall very easily in your own game. So the most common moves here, bishop e3. We can just trade off this knight and immediately win the head of the pawn chain. And black is just completely winning in this position. Let's go back to when white played h3. So what's the most common move at the 1400 level? And it's the move bishop e3. And this is also most common at the 2000 level. So here, white is more aware of the danger and they're adding more protection to the base. So here's a little quiz for you again. How can black add more pressure against that base? Now, there's only one minor piece that's not contributing so far, and it's our dark square bishop. Now, it can't come to c5 directly, it will just be captured. So how can that dark square bishop contribute? And the idea here is to play bishop to e7, and we're rerouting that bishop with the support of our queen to the g5 square, where again, it doesn't attack the base directly, but it attacks one of the defenders of the base. So we can see how every single minor piece is trying to contribute to this effort. So the game normally goes h3 now. We trade off our bishop for that piece that was defending the base. And now we can play bishop g5, again, attacking that defender of the base. The game normally goes bishop takes, queen takes, and let's take stock here. We're attacking the base twice, they're defending it once. White normally goes knight b5, adding another defender, but white is starting to crack under the pressure. So even at this level, they don't survive forever. We're ready to kick that knight and then capture the base. So first of all, we need to castle because white's threatening a fork here, so we still need to consider tactics. White normally plays bishop g4. They're trying to remove an attacker of the base. So notice this common theme. We're either attacking the base or trying to remove defenders of the base. White is either trying to defend the base or remove our attackers of the base. It's this constant back and forth. We can now play a6, kicking the defender. White takes one of our attackers, and what white misses here, and this is a really important move to remember, is that we can take the knight first. Now, once again, we're attacking the base, they're defending it once, but this bishop is under attack, they need to deal with that first. Now, here's the divergence. At 1500, white typically goes to the g4 square. And they don't find the right square, and black is completely winning. We just add another attacker with queen f4, and by relentlessly applying pressure, white just now is going to collapse. Their most common move is bishop e2, and we just take it. So the head will fall soon, and black will win. And this is a very typical pattern in these advanced structures. So white put up quite a decent fight at this 1500 level, but ultimately they still couldn't handle the pressure. Now, let's go back to when white retreated the bishop like this. At the 2000 level, white actually finds the correct retreat, which is c2. And it does save the base temporarily because after we play queen f4, again, adding a second attacker, white is able to defend it quite creatively by playing queen d3, threatening a checkmate on h7, which we have to deal with first, and they buy themselves time. So we play g6, stopping the mate, and then they have time to play rook f to d1. So again, white has managed to survive here at the 2000 level with their base intact. So again, it comes to this question, what comes next for black if white does defend well and the base doesn't just collapse? And this is where we have rule number 3. We want to trade white's light square bishop. As we saw in the Greek gift in video 7 and in video 8, that light square bishop for white really is the key attacking piece for white in these pawn chain structures. And let's see how that would look in practice in this game. Very simply here, black has knight b4, forking the queen and bishop. After queen e2, knight takes bishop, queen recaptures. We're now just in a very safe position. Yes, they've managed to hold on to their pawn chain, but it is no longer a threat. It's no longer doing anything to us. It doesn't matter that we don't have a knight on f6 because there is no attack for white. They've ran out of attacking resources. Crucially, they've lost that light square bishop. Let's go back to that French structure. And again, it's that same position. White has defended well. So how do we apply rule 3? How do we try to win that light square bishop to neutralize the threat? So we can, again, just play knight b4 here. Now, that light square bishop is key for white in all of those sacrifice lines. And once it's gone, we can safely castle kingside and be confident that white has no sudden attacks coming. So the only way for white to try to hold on to that bishop here is bishop a4. And after we play queen a6, we're attacking the bishop and preventing castling. White's most common move is to just trade that bishop. And it's true that we've had to move our king, but this is a closed position. Look how these central pawns are all locked together. And white has now traded off their most dangerous attacking piece. So our king is actually completely safe here. And don't forget as well, white still can't castle in this position. It's actually white's king that's in more danger. Now, to really test we've understood everything, let's go back to this position and look at the two most common moves for white at grandmaster level. The first one is knight d2. They're defending their pawn and they're waiting for us to play knight f6 before committing to e5. Now, again, I don't recommend knight f6. I recommend the other theoretical move, which is c5. Now, the idea here is that white can't comfortably go into an advanced structure anymore. If they play e5 immediately, we take this and the base is gone. If they try to support this, we can actually take first, then take again at some point, and they're now playing with an isolated queen's pawn, which is why, after we play c5, the most common move from white is to actually go into an exchange structure. And here we can play queen takes because that knight can't come to c3 anymore. And typically in the French, exchange structures are very comfortable for black. So this has been an opening success. Now, going back, the other big move that white can play at grandmaster level is knight c3. Similar idea again. They're defending this pawn which we're attacking, and they're waiting for us to play knight f6 before committing to e5, so they gain a tempo. Now again, I recommend not playing knight f6 and playing the other theoretical move, which is bishop b4. This is indirectly pressuring the e4 pawn because we're pinning its defender, and it's why the most theoretical move from white is to now play e5. They feel forced to do it now before they lose the pawn. Now, by showing patience, we've forced white to play a slow move. Now, rule number one has been successfully navigated here. We didn't allow them to play with tempo. And what's rule number two? Again, it's attack the base. Here's the base on d4. So what do we need to play? c5. We're just attacking the base. Now, white plays a clever move here, which is a3. They want to be able to recapture this base with a pawn. So they're going to attack our bishop first, force us to exchange it, and therefore bring a pawn to c3, so they're ready to recapture with a pawn. So good idea for white, trying to hold that base together. In theory, we could play knight c6 next, which attacks the base. We could play knight g to e7, looking to come to f5, again to attack the base. Knight e7 is the preferred move, because we need to be a little bit worried about queen g4. I would say, if you really want to play the French defence, this is pretty much the only thing you really need to study carefully, this queen g4 variation in this, and it's very specific stuff. You might not see it very often in your own games. But just to illustrate the point, I want to show the second most popular move, which is knight f3, just to illustrate how we apply our rules here. We can apply rule 2 and play knight c6, but a really nice idea to insert first, and this shows the point that we don't need to play rule 2 before rule 3. We can change them up and play them in any order we want. We play b6 with the idea to play bishop a6, exchange it with the light square bishop, which was rule number 3, to neutralise white's attack, and we're never going to have sacrifices to deal with in this advanced structure. So, for example, a very common move for white is bishop d3. We immediately play bishop a6, and those bishops will get traded, and then we'll have satisfied rule 3 about neutralising the attack, and we'll be able to safe to castle kingside. So the game might carry on castles, we trade the bishops, and then we just continue with rule number 2, attacking the base, and we play knight b to c6. For example, they might trade these pawns, temporarily losing their base, but then replacing it, and we can just continue from there in a normal game, and we are going to be safe because that light square bishop is gone. Now, going back to when they played bishop d3, another move they might play, which is really clever, is bishop b5 check first. The idea is that after we block with the bishop, they then play bishop d3, and our bishop can no longer come to the a6 square to trade itself off. So they've deflected our bishop. So a really clever move from white. So what is our idea now? Because we're not going to have enough resources to overwhelm that base. White is going to have enough defenders. We also aren't going to be able to trade off the light square bishops in this position. So the other idea is actually simply not castling kingside, but instead castling queenside, so that we're never in danger of getting hit with these sacrifices on h6 and h7. Now, castling queenside in a structure like this possibly looks quite intimidating, but there is a specific way to make it work. What we want to do is blockade the c file and blockade the a file so that no white pieces can get through, and our king will be perfectly safe on that side of the board. So the first move here, and this is the really advanced stuff, is to play c4. We're blockading the c file, so this white pawn on c3 can never move. It can never make a pawn break and try to open up our queen side. They obviously play bishop e2, and then we play bishop a4. We couldn't trade that light square bishop, but we can use it for another job now, which is to blockade the a pawn, stop it moving, so it will never be able to trade itself off and open the a file. Now, with both of these files blockaded, our king will actually be incredibly safe on the queen side. And again, now, who cares about this pawn on e5 anymore? So let's look at some common moves at the 2000 level. So at the 2000 level, white castles, and black just now needs to develop their knight, develop their queen and castle queenside. And then we've effectively neutralised that red flag, that pawn, in our half of the board on e5. So we might play knight b to c6. White normally plays knight g5. For some reason, we can just kick it back immediately. They're trying to hit this pawn for after we castle, so we just kick it back. They normally go back to h3. We can move our queen ready to castle. They play knight f4, castle queenside, and the black king is completely safe over here. White has no pawn breaks on the queen side, and their pieces are really going to struggle to get in on the b file, so we're actually completely safe. And we've successfully now dealt with this red flag. I mean, it was a complicated method we had to use, but we have done it. Let's summarise the 3 rules from today that help you survive against these advanced structures. Rule number 1 is don't let white play the move e5 with tempo. Play a waiting game and force them to do something else. Rule number 2, attack the base of the pawn chain with everything you have. If the base falls, the head will fall soon after, and then the game will be yours. Rule number 3, if white defends well, is to try to trade off their light square bishop. That's the bishop that causes all the problems in the Greek gift sacrifice and the h6 sacrifices. Failing that, you also have the option of securing your queen side and castling there instead of walking into an attack on the king side.